Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, your friend and mine, Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to a wonderful weekend. Summer's finally here. Friends, family rolling in. Tourists all over the place. The energy here in Cody, Wyoming has been elevated by about 300%. The nightly rodeo starts tonight, I believe. So we're going to have a rodeo every single night, and a big rodeo over the 4th of July. People come in from all over the world for that rodeo. It's a big one. It's televised. PBR comes out and televises it. So, man, there's so much good stuff going on in the summer here in Cody, Wyoming. Hope to see any of our fans that listen. Watch us over at 83weeks.com, wherever you get your dose. If you're coming through Cody, Wyoming, man, hit me up. Send me one of them messages on Twix, DM, whatever they're called. Let me know. If you're in town, we'll go grab a burger.
How about that? A little open invite from adfreeshows.com. And we hope you guys are enjoying all that we're doing at adfreeshows.com, including we've got a brand new announcement that I can reveal right here, right now, Eric, of some breaking news for our live studio audience. We've started our own little stable over at adfreeshows.com. We've got exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else from folks like the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, a member of Wrestling Royalty, Mr. David Crockett, and even a horseman, the total package, Lex Luger. But what's better than having one horseman, Eric? Having two. Let's check it out.
Hey everyone, it's WWE Hall of Famer Tully Blanchard, here to tell you about my brand new series coming to adfreeshows.com this June. Join me each and every month for Tully Vision, as Conrad Thompson and I break down some of my most memorable matches with stories and insight that I've never shared before. And what better way to kick it off than with my famous I Quit match against Magnum TA from Starrcade 85. Feuds with Dusty Rhodes and Wahoo McDaniel. War Games matches, the Horsemen, the Brainbusters. We'll be looking back at all on Tully Vision starting this June exclusively on adfreeshows.com.
Hey, brother, that's the first I heard of this. I'm going to check that out. You know, I got to meet Magnum TA, obviously, when I went to work for WCW, and we became friends and still are to this day. We cross paths fairly often out on the trail, so to speak. But I was never really able to watch him in his prime, you know, before his accident. So I love hearing stories about Magnum. He doesn't really talk about himself much when you're with him, but I'm going to mark that one down. That's a must watch for me.
We hope everyone will check it out at adfreeshows.com, where you get all of that, plus our regular podcasts early and ad-free. It's all at adfreeshows.com. Over the weekend, this past weekend, you and I were live a bunch. We went live on Saturday to talk about Queen and King of the Ring. We went live late on Sunday to talk about AEW Double or Nothing. You've also had a Wise Choices this week, and there's a lot of stuff happening at 83weeks.com. What's the feedback you've seen about our coverage of the live events?
It's been very, very positive. Of course, you know, I express my opinion. I don't hold back, and neither do some of the people that react, which is great. And some of them, you know, the people that disagree with me are just downright vicious and ugly, which is really great, because I cut and paste those puppies and use them for content and have fun with it. So please keep that shit coming. Do not hold back. Let your inner anger out. But yeah, it's been really positive and fun for me. And the more I do, the more I love doing it, which is, I guess, at some point going to be an issue because there's only, you know, you can only take so much of this face. But I love doing it. You know, what we're doing over at Wise Choices, breaking down, you know, everybody's been talking about story this, story that. Is there story? Is there too much story? Do the stories suck? All that crap. And there's a big debate. Everybody's got an opinion, which is fine. But what we're doing over at Wise Choices is talking to, guys like Tom DeShane, Harvard graduate in English and literature, has written books about Shakespeare's characters and all of Shakespeare's plays, award-winning books. Oh, and by the way, he's also an amazing wrestling fan that can break down a match from 1900, I don't know, pick a name out of the hat, 87, and break down that match from a story component kind of perspective. He's a huge wrestling fan. But we're just taking all this stuff and we're kind of trying to, I guess, get agreement at least. What is a storyline for wrestling? And how does a storyline work? What's the structure? What are the beats you got to hit? How do you look at a story structure and spread it out over the amount of time you want it to play out over? And we're taking looks from different angles from guys like Tom DeShane, also basing it on the writings of a guy by the name of Joseph Campbell, who wrote the book A Man with a Thousand Faces, which is ended up becoming the hero's journey. But traditional storytelling applied to the unique wrestling product. That's just an example of one of the things we're doing over there. Oh, and I do occasionally rant and fucking rave when appropriate. I try to manage that. But if something's happening, in the news or in any given moment, and it catches my attention and I feel feisty, yeah, I'll jump on and we'll have a blast. So stop on by, say hi.
Check it out if you haven't already. It's 83weeks.com. And right now, Eric, we're going to do something we haven't done in a little while. I guess maybe we did one last month, but we had such a blast with it that we saw a lot of requests. Hey, do more watch alongs. So that's actually what we're doing today. And we want you to pull your Peacock out and load it up, man. We're going to go to season 5, episode 21 of Monday Nitro. We're going to be watching a Memorial Day Nitro from 1999, 25 years ago. It's season 5, episode 21. Here we are, unbelievably, having a Monday Nitro the same day as the funeral for Owen Hart. So we're in late May of 99. You're probably in like absolute hell in Turner at this point, right?
What was the month?
At the end of May.
Oh,
99.
It was, probably within a week or 10 days of this date I thought things were bad leading up to this point that we're at in 1999. I was losing it and just borderline out of control in terms of trying to fight what I thought was the inevitable from the corporate side of Turner, trying to call people out. Conrad, I was calling out, naming names publicly of people within Turner Broadcasting at the highest levels on the executive committee. I was embarrassing them, attempting to embarrass them in meetings because I was forcing a fight that I hoped and I believed 100% at the time, because history at that point had proven me right and backed me up. But I was challenging people that I knew were setting me up for failure, or I didn't look at it personally, setting WCW up for failure. I knew it. I started seeing it in 98. By May of 99, I thought I was in the bowels of Turner financial hell, only to find out it gets worse right about this time. So yeah, when you talk about it being a horrible time, it's probably one of the darkest periods of my life, to be honest with you.
I can't wait to watch and celebrate such a dark, terrible time of your life. Oh gosh.
I know, my birthday too. I guess like you're floating around in the pool, down in the beach house. You can celebrate your birthday. Life's good for Mr. Thompson, and life was good for Mr. Bischoff for quite a few years leading up to this point. But man, can you imagine floating around that pool with all that anger and frustration? And no, take the fun out of everything.
I guess we should mention, as we're recording this, we're recording a little earlier than we might normally. Today is your birthday. And
shucks, I wasn't going to bring it up.
You told us the other night when we were finishing up the AEW pay-per-view recap that we did, that you did your annual celebratory birthday pedicure that Bruce Pritchard guilted you into a few years ago, and you had a little fun and painted your nails, and my goodness. Are you doing anything today on your actual birthday, Eric?
No, I'm going to wrap this up. Lori and I are going to just go into town, and literally there's a hotel right on the corner called the Irma Hotel. Buffalo Bill Cody built it, I think, in 1909 or something, named it after his daughter. And it's kind of the centerpiece of town, and it looks exactly the way it did back then. Inside, it's a little different, obviously, but it's still the same structure. And it has a big, giant porch that wraps around two sides of the building on the corner. And it's kind of where everybody hangs out when the weather's nice on the weekend, and just people watch and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to probably go do that. And then I got to get home and pack, because I've got 3 or 4 days in LA that I'm doing some stuff. So I'm going to be gone. So I'm going to pack everything tonight and drive up to Billings tonight so that I can leave first thing tomorrow morning and go have some fun in LA.
Well, I know everybody's going to wonder how that's going to go. So we'll stay tuned to see all these new developments, perhaps. But in the meantime,
nothing big. Don't read too much into it, because you'll be let down when I finally tell you. But it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to doing it. Let's put it that way.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching this whole Nitro. You said that it was maybe the worst of times. Boy, I wish I maybe would have thought of that before we're watching it. But we'll try not to get Eric too depressed.
You couldn't get me depressed right now, Mr. Thompson. You could not get me depressed no matter what you showed me. I've dealt with all this shit. I'm good with it, brother. Let it fly.
Let's do it. Season 5, episode 21. That's season 5, episode 21. I'll give us a countdown, and when I say play, you'll press play. We hope if you're watching along with us, you'll go ahead and mute your playback on the actual show. We'll do some alternate commentary for you here, and we'll get started in 3, 2, 1, play. And you see we've got that redesigned logo that we all hate so much flying in to start the show. And man, we're off to the races here. We see Raven walking into the back of the building here. Bam Bam Bigalow going to attack him, knocks the cameraman down in the process. And there's DDP. Looks like we're going to do a little Jersey Triad action here. I got to tell you, Eric, I like the way that started, where the cameraman took the bump. That added some realism to it.
Boy, didn't it ever? I mean, you talk about, they refer to it as ENG, or electronic news gathering, kind of a shot, where you're basically, if you imagine you're running up to a car crash, if you're a news person or you're a fire of some sort, and you're literally jogging with the camera, so you get that kind of jittery, unconventional look, as opposed to the camera on a tripod lock look. And it does make it feel more real. It makes it feel more urgent, like there's actually action happening, and it's a little bit chaotic and uncontrolled, which is exactly the feeling you're trying to emote with that kind of a shot. I love that work when you can, anytime you can use ENG instead of, lockdown shots. I much prefer it for that very reason.
Want to remind everybody that we said it at the top of the show, but this show is happening the same day as the funeral for Owen Hart. And obviously that's a big deal for everyone in professional wrestling. Did you ever see the tribute to Owen, that episode of Monday Night Raw? Have you ever seen that one?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's not a fun thing to think about, having to do a tribute show. What did you think of tribute shows like that for fallen wrestlers?
They're hard for me. Now, I think the only one that I was a part of was Eddie Guerrero. That was hard for me.
Yeah.
And I was in the back, I probably couldn't even see me on camera very well. My choice, because I knew what was going to happen. I cry at Disney movies. These things are tough for me. And it was one of the reasons it was so hard is not just the devastating loss of somebody like Eddie that was a friend and a coworker, a peer. But from where I stood in the back, knowing the people that were in the very front were the people that were closest to Eddie, and just trying to imagine how they felt actually made it all worse, because I had relationships with those people, and I could, if I couldn't feel what they were actually feeling, I came close enough that it was so hard just being there. I think though, it's what someone like Eddie would want and appreciate and be grateful for, because someone like Eddie or anybody that's in that situation would understand that it's also for the family and the fans and the friends, as much as anything else. So I think they're appropriate, but personally, for obvious reasons, I hope I'm never part of another one. I know I will be, but I hope that I'm not.
We're seeing some shots here of Tank Abbott, and it's reported in the Observer that he signed a 3-year deal. What was your experience like dealing with Tank Abbott? Are you calling him? Is he calling you? And as far as just the actual contract process, was it easy to deal with?
He was awesome. I don't know how people think about Tank Abbott. He's one of the coolest dudes. I mean, he went through some shit like we all do. But man, you talk about a guy that's come out of it. I've got a book that he wrote. He sent me. And to be really honest, I haven't gotten through it. I started it, sat for a couple months, started it again, kind of thing. And I'm going to finish it because it's a dense book. But this cat is special. He's a good human being. And if you get a chance to meet Tank out on the circuit, out on the trail, go out of your way and have a conversation with him. He's a great storyteller. He's a wonderful human being, and he's been through some shit. So check him out. I enjoyed working, even then, before I even got to know him. I did his deal. He didn't have an agent or attorney, I don't think. I remember dealing with Tank face to face, laid back, chill, respectful. Didn't have a super high opinion of himself. Didn't think he was going to walk in and become the next, Ric Flair or Stone Cold Steve Austin or Hulk Hogan. He just wanted to get in there, and he's one of those guys that just likes contact. He grew up with it. I can kind of relate to it. Not to suggest that I was ever on his level, but when you grow up, probably much like growing up in Alabama with football, you learn to love the contact, as much as you love the game itself. And that's the way Tank was. I liked him, and I've learned to respect him and like him even more now.
We got the Nitro girls doing their thing here. By the way, this show is coming to you live from the Astrodome. Yeah, the freaking Astrodome. It is a huge show. Obviously, we've got a lot of folks there. 15,004 fans. The gate here is an incredible $438,175. Now, as amazing as this is to have 15,000 fans for a live television show, that'd be a big deal if it was in AEW, if it was in the WWE. I mean, then, now, forever, 15,000 for TV is huge. However, just 6 months prior, there was a Monday Nitro in this same building. Yeah, they ran multiple Nitros at the Astrodome. Now, that one was December 7th, 1998, before Goldberg's undefeated streak was over. The main event was Goldberg defending that title against Bam Bam Bigalow. And that show drew over 32,000 fans. And that is just unfathomable. I mean, here I am so genuinely impressed that we've got 15,000 people at a television show. And then to think, boy, it was more than double that just 6 months ago. I mean, that's got to be a real feather in your cap, man. 32,000 for TV. That's unbelievable. But it also shows you that momentum's a real thing, where in 6 months, it's less than half of that.
Yeah. And, I don't want to talk too much about what's going on over in AEW, but there's always these parallels. Where is AEW at in its, trajectory from day one, approximately 5 years ago, to today? And there's always somewhere along the line, this is where WCW was at this point, and here's where AEW is. So there's always that parallel and comparison. Some of it for obvious reasons, some of it just because people like to do that kind of shit. But this was, without question, this period of time was, without question, was not quite a nosedive, but somewhere between a nosedive and a horrible glide path. somewhere in the middle. And to think that as bad as things were, and they were in WCW, from a overall management perspective, from a creative perspective, from a morale perspective, from a ratings perspective, there was not one way you could look at WCW in 1999 and find a ray of bright light, unless you turned yourself inside out and into a pretzel trying to reanalyze data. But nobody was doing that. There was no effort on anybody's part to find the positive news in anything. Quite the contrary. But to think that you could still do, $400,000 in 1999 was probably around, I don't know, 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 now. I don't know. I can't do the math in my head. But to think, as horrible as things were, people were still giving the brand a chance. They hadn't given up completely, but man, were they on their way. And there was still potential at this time. Still some light at the end of the tunnel. But it wouldn't be long before that was gone.
Eddie Guerrero is back on the show here. They're actually going to be talking about his auto accident. This is him returning, of course, around the turn of the year, like around New Year's Eve. He had just a horrible car accident. And you see the pictures that they're showing there of his Porsche. I mean, a lot of people felt like he was lucky just to even survive this. And now he's back on the show here. He's going to be joining to do color commentary. And of course, when the accident actually happened, they were doing an angle saying that he was injured by the NWO. But now, of course, we're telling the real story, that he was in this car accident. How excited were you to see Eddie Guerrero back and looking healthy and ready to work?
On a personal level, I was really, really happy. I was grateful because there was a period of time when we weren't sure we were going to get it back, that he'd be able to come back or get through it at all. So yeah, very, very happy to have him back. On a personal level, I always loved Eddie, loved working with Eddie. Got a kick out of hanging out with him. Professionally, that could be a roller coaster, partly because of him and partly because of me. We had these personalities that neither one of us were afraid to be very honest about where we were coming from. And I respected that in Eddie. I welcomed that. I'd rather know the truth about what somebody's thinking than the bullshit that generally you get. And there was no bullshit with Eddie. He was straightforward and somewhat emotional from time to time. And so was I. So that part of it could be touchy. But the rest of it, man, being around him, being with him, having a beer with him, after the show, I had great memories of Eddie. Was happy to have him back.
Here comes Chastity with Hack, the former Sandman from ECW. He was also a subject for the Dark Side of the Ring series that's on Vice. And I guess now is a perfectly good time for us to mention that we're actually going to be having some fun over at 83weeks.com with the creators of that fabulous series, Who Killed WCW. I know you participated in that, Eric, and I know that we're going to have some opportunities to break down those episodes and have some special guests. It's all happening at 83weeks.com. I know you've had a chance to see episode 1. What'd you think of what you've seen so far?
Well, I'm going to save all that to wise choices because I'm going to do a breakdown after each one of these. Here's the truth. I was contacted to be a part of the project, and in full transparency, I wasn't interested initially. And the reason is it had been, covering Nitro and WCW had been done so many times. There was so much false narrative out there, and it's been there for so long, it's never going to go away. And the story had been told, particularly by WWE and others. And it's like, well, what else are we going to talk about? I knew there was another story, but I didn't know that that's what Rock, Dwayne Johnson, Seven Bucks Productions, Brian Gewirtz, Vice, I didn't know that's what they were interested in. I thought we were going to get another standard. Oh, here we go. I've seen it all before. And then once I heard the angle of attack, I went, This is a little bit like Guy Evans' book, talking about a lot of information that people never knew, including me, by the way. Big situations, big missing pieces in my mind that I knew had to be occurring, but I couldn't imagine where or who. And then years later, we're reading Guy Evans' book, and he did interviews with some of these people. So there's a whole different perspective out there. And I'm not suggesting people buy into one or the other, but there's a different perspective. And we're going to break that down after each episode of Who Killed WCW over on Dark Side of the Ring. Vice.
83weeks.com is where you'll be able to check that out each and every week. And right now we're seeing Kidman take on Hack, and Eddie Guerrero is doing color commentary. And Meltzer would say Eddie was not very good on color. He would also point out that when we last saw Eddie at the very end of the year, and the beginning of this year here in 99, Eddie Guerrero had been this asshole heel. But now he's a quote unquote timid babyface, according to Dave Meltzer. I really did think, as much as I enjoyed Eddie's work as a babyface in the WWE, I thought his best work in WCW was as a heel. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. Eddie embraced the heat. He wasn't a wrestler playing a heel. He was a professional wrestler embracing his character. And I think he was more comfortable as a heel. He was great as a babyface, but I don't know. Other people that knew Eddie better than I did would be able to better comment on this. But I always got the impression that Eddie preferred being a heel. It was more fun. Who wouldn't? Being a babyface is hard. Really hard work. You got to be on. Look at Cody Rhodes and he's the champ. He's the face of the company and all the things that come along with it, including the money and the opportunity and the travel and the experiences. But it's also a ton of work because Cody is out there representing the company in a million different ways that none of us ever see on television or pay-per-view. It's his business, and it's a full-time and a half business, and it's work. Whereas being a heel, you don't get a lot of the, you don't make the money, you don't get the accolades and the experiences, which are the most important, I think, for me anyway. The memories and the experiences you don't get as a heel that you do get as a babyface, but you pay the price. It's not free.
We've got Tank Abbott and his band of merry men coming in down to the ringside area. And we know that, we're going to be seeing Brian Knobbs, and this is the hardcore wrestling era of WCW. Hey, there's something that was coming out in the newsletters at the time I wanted to ask you about. Quote, woman bodybuilder Trish Stratus has received feelers now from both the WWF and WCW. I got to tell you, that sort of flew off the page to me. I didn't know that she ever had a real conversation with anybody in WCW. Do you recall any conversation about or with Trish?
I didn't know it either until just now.
Wow.
But it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Could have been Terry Taylor. There was always people sending in tapes. There were talent looking for opportunities, selling in tapes, 8x10s, resumes, whatever. There were always stacks of them in the booking room, writer's room. So could very easily have happened. I just wasn't aware of it.
Hey, there's another note here. I guess this was kind of being discussed a lot at the time, that ECW might about to be landing a national television deal. We know that they would actually announce that they're going to be going on TNN. They're going to do a 1-hour weekly show. I don't think it's actually going to debut until the end of August, but here we are. And at the end of May, people are saying, hey, this is really going to happen. Now, you're pretty much entire time you had been competing and running WCW against the WWE. They were growing this little independent promotion in Philadelphia called ECW, and they had some syndicated TV around the country in some of the major markets. But maybe you feel differently about them now that you hear they're about to be on national television, or is that even on your radar at the time?
It's the last thing on my mind. Not with no disrespect to ECW or Paul or anybody else, where ECW was at this particular time, because they were getting an opportunity. That is growth. So there's nothing to, for me to throw stones at for any reason. It would be stupid. But there was so much other stuff going on that was way more important to me in that period of time that I didn't really even, if I knew it, I didn't even register it. It didn't matter to me. Again, because the building was on fire. I'm not worried about, who's planting a tree out in my front lawn. I'm worried about keeping the house from burning down.
Well, I'll tell you what, my buddies have been wearing it out. They've been burning the house down with our friends over at Prize Picks. I actually had a conversation with my cousin Clint over the weekend. He was down here for the holiday and he was actually wearing a Prize Picks shirt. And I said, "Hey man, you like Prize Picks?" He goes, "Oh dude, all my friends love Prize Picks. That's all we play." And I said, "Wow, that's awesome, man. So what do you like about Prize Picks?" "Dude, these NBA playoffs, there's nothing like them with Prize Picks." He started doing the commercial for me. He is a real fan of what Prize Picks is doing. I think you will be too. They're America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action and watch all your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, and then you just watch the winnings roll in, especially right here during basketball season. I know the WNBA is just getting kicked off, but boy, it is getting heated up over in the NBA. I'm having a lot of fun with these playoffs. I think you will too. And Prize Picks is the best way to get you in on the action and across like more than 30 states. Yeah, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And here's how it works. You can win up to 100 extra money with as little as 4 correct picks. You've got an opportunity to turn $10 into like $1,000 with basketball or hockey. It's all with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. They've even got a community tab where you can see all the promos for the week, and you can even see what other celebrities are actually picking, like Meek Mill or Sugar Sean O'Malley. But here's one of my favorite things that Prize Picks does. Even my cousin Clint was telling me about this. Injury insurance. It means if your entries are maybe at risk, or so you think, because one of your players goes down in the first half, maybe he doesn't come back for the second half, hey, Prize Picks has your back. They're not going to count that as a loss. There's never been a better time to get started. It's simple to play Prize Picks. You can make your picks and get started in less than 60 seconds. They've got quick withdrawals. They've got easy gameplay. I love it. I think you will too. Go right now. I'm telling you, you're going to love this. Go right now and download the app. Use the code 83weeks. You'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. Download the app today for Prize Picks. Use our promo code 83weeks. You'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. This is Prize Picks, man. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And a little pro tip, pick more than on Luka. My goodness, he's been a beast this weekend. Go right now. Download Prize Picks. Use our code 83weeks for a first deposit match of up to $100. So we're seeing Ric Flair talking with J.J. Dillon in the back. What do you think of J.J. as a television character here, as the figurehead commissioner for WCW at times?
He did it really well. He didn't come on too strong. He didn't look forced. It was a very natural role for him because it wasn't really too far off some of his administrative duties that he actually did full time in WCW. So it was kind of an extension of who he really was. It was also a callback to, being a manager for the Four Horsemen. There was a relationship there. So, I mean, it was a completely logical casting, if you will.
We should mention that during that little segment, Flair was announcing that the elbow off the top rope is now banned. And you may recall recently we did a little watch along of a Nitro, and we saw him being Randy Savage flying off onto Charles Robinson. Boy, that was a serious circumstance for Charles Robinson. But still, this is all story. We've banned the elbow off the top rope. Kind of fun little wrinkle there. Hey, let's talk about some real stuff because it's in the Observer. Quote, New Japan Sakaguchi and Masa Saito came to the U.S. this week to meet with Eric Bischoff. They want WCW to send bigger names like Goldberg, or they'll switch to doing business with the WWF.
That's bullshit. That is so much. But we've learned a lot about Dave, haven't we?
So that never happened. They never threatened. Okay.
My relationship with New Japan was so solid in 1999 that I could have used it for leverage. if I was in the middle of negotiating with WCW, or if I needed, it's not my style to leverage relationships, by the way, professionally or personally. But if I wanted to, because our business with New Japan was significant. Ted, although I didn't know it at the time, that Ted's influence really didn't matter. I thought it still did, which is why I was picking fights with people who were much higher up the food chain than I was, because I believed that it would force a confrontation between me and whoever I had an issue with and Ted, because it had happened in the past that way. I just didn't know that Ted was being diluted within his own company. But I could have used it. In fact, Masa Saito and Masa Saito and Mr. Bischoff, who is their business affairs kind of general manager, came to visit Lori and I in Hawaii later on in 1999, because Lori and I renewed our vows on Waikiki that year. And Masa and his wife Michi and Mr. Baijo and his wife came in and were part of our ceremony. That's the real relationship between us and New Japan, not the figment of the distorted mind and perspective of Dave Meltzer.
Of course, we're watching Diamond Dallas Page come down to the ring here with his old buddy Bam Bam Bigelow. I do want to bring up something that was in the Observer about the Nitro prior to this. I guess this is where the wheels started to come off, maybe in the locker room as well. You were talking about how miserable you were in WCW at the time, and so many others were. Well, here is the report from Nitro the week prior, according to the Observer. There was considerable legit heat between Bischoff and a lot of the wrestlers for legit deviating from the script on Monday in promos, where they openly knocked the direction of the company and holding the young guys back. In particular, Disco Inferno, Buff Bagwell, Hugh Morris, and Dean Malenko. Bischoff and Malenko had a heated confrontation after a live angle where Malenko said, "You have to show where you're over 45 on your driver's license in order to get a push in WCW." Do you remember this confrontation with Dean? What can you tell us about this?
I've never had a confrontation with Dean, ever. I've had discussions with Dean that probably never exceeded the level of emotion that's taking place between you and I right now. There were serious conversations, but never a heated confrontation. That's the kind of bullshit that gets me hot. That's the kind of bullshit that inspires me and motivates me to call him out, him being Dave Meltzer, every single time I see him spew bullshit, because he creates a perception that isn't true amongst the most vulnerable wrestling fans out there who think that Dave Meltzer knows what the fuck he's talking about. And this was a perfect example. I've never even heard Dean Malenko raise his voice to anybody else, more or less me. And I would never raise my voice to Dean Malenko, ever, because you don't have to speak to Dean Malenko that way to have a serious conversation and a productive one. Just more bullshit from Dave Meltzer.
Oh, goodness gracious. I didn't expect.
Well, you asked the question. It's not like I want to talk about him, and I know why we are, because we're looking for context here. And Dave, as much as he's full of shit in so many ways as it relates to the business of the wrestling business and what works and what doesn't work, or what's working and what's not working. The fact is, from an historical perspective, and what happened when and where and to who, and some of the immediate data, including attendance and gates and things like that, there is not a better resource. So I'm not knocking that aspect of using him as a resource, but it's the editorial that comes with that shit stain that really gets under my skin. And this is the example. And I think it's important that wrestling fans that want to engage, whether it be in social media, whether it be in a chat room, whatever, if you're going to engage and be a part of the conversation, at least have a basic understanding of what's real and what's not real. And if your only source is someone like Dave Meltzer, then you have such a dysfunctional view of what the business is really all about. Read Dave. but also go read others. You go over to Dave Scheer and Mike Johnson at PWI. Get a different perspective. Sean Ross Sapp, yeah, he's controversial. He's half-assed character, for crying out loud. He's entertaining as fuck. But guess what? A lot of his information is well-sourced. It's real information, and the perspective that comes with it is a unique one. You don't have to agree with him. I don't agree with everything that Sean Ross Sapp says. I agree with a lot of it. Jim Cornette, another example. Yeah, he's probably in my age group, and he's old man yelling at the clouds. He's an old man yelling at the clouds that's got a wealth of experience and perspective under his belt. You may not like the way he says some of the things he says. I may not like it, all right? But I respect the hell out of his perspective. So I point Dave out in terms of the way he editorializes, even to this day, which is becoming so transparent. I think a lot of people are recognizing what Dave is really all about. But learn, man, experience, and take in different perspectives, whether it's from Cornette or Bruce Pritchard or Tully Blanchard, Tully Vision. Listen to those perspectives, because you'll find that they often contrast with some of the current narrative you have by so-called experts.
I got to talk about this supposed fight you had with Malenko, because the following week, Meltzer would write, I believe the Malenko comments and Bischoff yelling at him at the May 24th Nitro may not have been a shoot. Hogan came back on the 24th and suggested doing an old versus new angle, largely because he wants to shoot on the new guys who are never drawing money. Of course, in WCW scheme of things, guys like Nash, who are 40, are the young team. The old team will be Page, Hogan, Savage, Piper, Flair, Bigalow. Of course, this will probably fall apart quickly enough all on its own anyway. Flair, based on his performances Thursday and Monday, for the first time I can recall, is just going through the motions without any passion and has considered quitting again. So lots of news and notes about WCW at the time. But a week after he says, hey, it was a pretty heated confrontation, then he's suggesting maybe it was you trying to work the boys. How often? I mean, I know you tried to do that a little bit with the Pillman stuff, but was there another time where you can recall?
None of it happened, Conrad. None of the picture that they painted in that commentary ever occurred. There was, first of all, it didn't occur in the first place. There was no heated confrontation. So right off the bat, it's a lie. It's a distortion. First of all, Dave wasn't in the building. What the fuck does he know? He doesn't know anything. The only thing he knows is what somebody else told him, and somebody probably fed him that just to watch Dave write it and get a reaction. It's the same stuff that the talent would pull on each other in a locker room. It's a fucking rib. That's the kind of crap that Dave Meltzer, to this day, still prints. He wasn't in the building. Last week he was talking about the fans at the MGM where they were hot from the beginning to the end. He was in his fucking apartment in San Jose. He wasn't in the building. And we talked to people who were in the building and said it was deader than Kelsey's nuts through a lot of the periods of time that Dave said they were on fire. So the distortion is my issue. First, heated confrontation never fucking happened. And now, I guess to cover his ass, perhaps, or somebody told him he was full of shit. Hey, Dave, I can't believe you printed that. Somebody pulled the rib out of you. Whatever. He comes back and says, oh, he's working the boys. He wasn't fucking working anybody at that point. Are you kidding me? I could have cared fucking less what the boys were thinking at that point in time. I had a bigger fire to put out than what the boys in the back, as Vince Russo always used to like to call them. I refer to them as talent. But yeah, I could give two shits in May of 1999 about working anybody.
You ain't got to get hot about it, bro.
I'm not hot. I'm making it fucking abundantly clear. There's a difference.
Sound pretty heated to me. Hey, so this is the birth of the West Texas Rednecks here. We saw Kurt Hennig come out doing some bad singing, but Bobby Duncombe Jr. is going to join him, give him a cowboy hat. He's going to start singing. Here comes Conan cutting a badass promo. He's got Rey Mysterio unmasked beside him. This is the beginning of the the birth of the West Texas Rednecks. This is I don't think anybody expected this to be a hit, but boy, it became a cult classic, did it not?
It's awesome. I don't care what anybody says. You don't like it, don't watch it. I think the idea was cool. It was timely. It was not meant to be disrespectful to anybody. It was taking two areas of pop culture in music and having them clash in a storyline. And if you've got a problem with that, well, I don't know, fuck off. But I liked this. I thought it was great. I think it could have been 100 times better in so many ways, because I think it really had a lot more potential than we were able to achieve with it. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
Man, we see the Slim Jim bumpers there. We got to talk about some other news that's happening on the other channel. I guess it's come out here that the WWF has signed a deal for SmackDown to become a part of the UPN lineup. Do you remember what your reaction was that they too were adding a second show? I mean, you had gone through that with all the success of Nitro, now a new station. You know, that was a TNT show. Well, TBS wanted in on the action, so you were sort of forced into creating Thunder. And now the WWF, they've got a successful show on USA with Monday Night Raw, and now they've got another opportunity for a second show with SmackDown on UPN. You know what those challenges were with that second show. When you hear your competition is going down that same trail, what did you think?
I was relieved because I felt like that might create a distraction and a dilution of resources. All the same issues that I had to deal with prior, you know, with Thunder, as you just pointed out. I went through it. I knew the impact that it had on me. I knew the impact that it had on Nitro. I knew that the impact that it had on talent. There's a lot of implications in adding that Thunder show that are not obvious on the screen or even in the narrative from people, you know, that were covering wrestling at the time. A lot of implications. And because WWE at that time had been on such a roll with when they adopted, when the Attitude Era really was a reflection of what we had been doing in Nitro, and Vince changed his perspective or changed his business model and said, okay, we're going to quit going for teens and preteens because that's been our market. We need to go after WCW's audience, which is 18 to 49. That's what created Mr. McMahon. That's what created the Attitude Era, is the need to compete for the 18 to 49 demo that I had already captured from a wrestling perspective. And they did it well. They did it aggressively. They focused. They were willing to do things, they meaning WWE, do things that WCW was not only not willing to do, incapable of doing in some cases. Vince McMahon's a one-man band. He can do whatever the hell he wants. I was working for a public company that didn't have the latitude that Vince had. He could take chances that I couldn't take. And he exploited that difference. He took it full advantage of the fact that he could go as far as he wanted to go in order to capture that portion of my audience and take it. And he did. And I thought that SmackDown would put Vince and WWE, as a result, into a similar position that I was with SmackDown, in that, or that I was with Thunder, in that it takes creative horsepower. You're going to have to split your creative teams, or at least split the focus of your creative teams, if nothing else. You've got the burden of an additional production schedule now that's going to affect not only talent, but it's going to affect your crew as well. It's going to put strain on people. They're taking on 100% more work, for crying out loud. That's a lot of pressure. That has a significant impact on your infrastructure. So I'm thinking, all right, he's going to take all this on. It's going to distract from Raw night. It's going to distract from Raw. It's going to dilute Raw. It's going to do the same things to Raw that Thunder did to Nitro. And I looked at that as breathing room, if that makes sense. I thought, okay, my opponent is gassed, is about to get gassed. My opponent is about to back into the corner and start dropping his hands because he's gassed. That would be my opportunity to mount some kind of a comeback, business-wise, creatively. That's how I looked at it.
Well, I don't know how we looked at this, but we've got Van Hammer wrestling Evan Courageous. I think Kevin Nash is helping with a lot of the booking. And I almost wish we should all just tweet him right now and ask him why he thought this was something we needed in our lives. Van Hammer and Evan Courageous.
Can I say something right now? And because it's relevant, especially with the comment that you just made. You know, a lot of the commentary about who killed WCW we've all heard the WWE narrative a million times, and the talent that worked there that repeated that narrative a million times, and the Dave Meltzer, narrative, which I don't even need to address again. We've done that. There's all this narrative out there, and a lot of it is coming from wrestling talent who were in WCW. Here's the truth, and I've made it clear in the series. The wrestling talent that have had these real strong views and all the WWE versions of what happened in WCW and all that didn't have a fucking clue. They were nowhere near the business of WCW's business. They were nowhere near the things that were going on internally at Turner Corporate across all the divisions. They were nowhere near the impact that had on WCW and what we were facing. They didn't know. They knew them things were messed up, but they had no idea why. But it didn't prevent that talent or people like Dave Meltzer and others to have this inside perspective, which they were making up. The only exception when I say, for the most part, talent were fucking clueless. They didn't know, no matter who they are. Some of my best friends have made statements in the past about what was going on inside WCW. And I'm going, dude, you don't know. You weren't there. I didn't even discuss it with you. Not only were you not there because you were off running around wrestling and working out and getting tan, doing the things you needed to do, keeping your body healthy. I was running a business that you had no visibility in. You had no insight in. Cool. I don't care. But there were exceptions to that. One of them is Kevin Nash. Kevin and I had a relationship where I did share things with Kevin that I didn't share with a lot of other talent, hardly any other talent. Diamond Dallas Page was another one. Hulk Hogan was another. But Hulk Hogan he didn't relate to it. And I wasn't around him as much as I was around Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash and I just bonded. Two Detroit guys, grew up basically in the same neighborhood. Didn't know each other at the time, different ages, obviously, but same neighborhood, same culture, same way of growing up, and we bonded. And I did share a lot of things with Kevin. So when you hear me make that statement about talent being fucking clueless, 90% of them were when they're commenting about what went wrong in WCW, with the exception of, like I said, DDP, Kevin Nash, Hulk to a degree, and maybe a few others, but very, very few, very few.
We're watching a heck of a Nitro here, but I mean, we said at the top of the show we got 15,000 fans here, but there is a downward trend, and I wanted to take just a minute and talk about that. In April of 1998, so the prior year, you were averaging 7,018 fans. In April of 99, you're only down 2% to 6,876. But because the business was so hot, you raised your ticket prices. So your average gate in April of 98 is $135,323. Here, though, in April of 99, you're actually up. So again, attendance is down 2%, but the gate revenue is up 19.8% to $162,069. And your average rating, okay, that's down a little bit. It's not disastrous. Take a look at this. In April of 98, your average rating was 4.69. Here in April of 99, it's a 4.16. So it is down 11.
It's a rounding error.
But you're still pulling fours. That's remarkable, Eric. I mean, okay, there's a few less fans showing up, but we're making 19% more money. It's easy to not necessarily panic when you hear some of this news.
Well, and again, the news was being so distorted at that time. If you looked at the real numbers, as you pointed out, we were up. And by the way, that average of 6,500 or whatever attendance, That's TV and house shows.
Yes.
So we were still drawing in house shows as well, non-televised events. AEW doesn't even do those. They can barely get 3,500 or 4,000 people to a TV taping, and they're supposedly hot. Not as hot as they were, according to some, but so that's the comparison. And it is frustrating to hear. You know, we're in April of 1999 or May of 1999. You just went through the numbers for April and compared them to 1998, which was one of our record years, by the way. Yeah, we're down 2% or whatever it is from a record fucking year.
Yes.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? To think that in a matter of 4 months, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Not even 4. Well, it May, June, July, August. Yeah, 4 months. I'm gone. Less than 4 months. I left on September 11th, September 10th, 1999. We're talking about May something here. With the kind of numbers that you're talking about, is if people don't think there wasn't an agenda to make WCW disappear from Turner Broadcasting, please watch the series on Vice. Please read Guy Evans' book. And please keep your nose out of Dave Meltzer's dirt sheet.
We were just running through some of the numbers. Well, I'd love to run through some of the numbers with you. Thanks to our friends over at Rocket Money. Here's the deal. Do you have any subscriptions you forgot about? Or maybe you've actually been paying for twice and didn't realize it? It happened to me. My wife and I both signed up for the same streaming service at the start of the pandemic. We watched TV together. She didn't need an account, and I needed a second account from the same provider. That was silly. But we thought we were on top of all that. Well, that is until we got Rocket Money. It turns out nearly 75% of people have subscriptions they've forgotten about. And I thought I was on top of that. Wrong. I'm saving hundreds of dollars now thanks to Rocket Money. Between all the streaming services, the fitness apps, and the delivery services, it feels like it's never ending. But thanks to Rocket Money, I'm no longer wasting money on the apps and the expenses that I forgot about. And if you're looking to save money and you felt like you've been stuck, well, Rocket Money could be your solution. It's a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and it helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. With Rocket Money, you have full control over all of your subscriptions and a clear view of your expenses. You can see everything that you're paying for in one place. And when you see something you don't want, Rocket Money can help you cancel it with just a few taps. They've also got a great dashboard that shows you this month's spending versus last month's, so you can clearly track all of your spending habits. They'll even help you create a custom budget to keep your spending on track. Rocket Money can even help you try to negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you got to do is submit a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money will take care of the rest. They deal with the customer service for you. Rocket Money has now over 5 million users who saved a total of over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. We're talking $740 a year for members when they're using all the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going right now to rocketmoney.com/83weeks. That's rocketmoney.com/83weeks. rocketmoney.com/83weeks. Back on Nitro, we've got Rowdy Roddy Piper doing a big promo in the ring here, and he's going to bring out Dean Malenko. And Malenko's not going to say much until Ric Flair comes out. I guess this is where they start building the whole old versus new stuff. And Malenko is going to start talking about how people like Ric Flair need to step aside. And Meltzer would say, it's kind of funny seeing Piper agree with him. So after all that, Malenko walked out and Flair jumped Piper, but Piper made his comeback and beat Flair up. This is a year before the whole millionaires versus new blood angle. Do you remember this being a Hogan idea? This sort of younger talent versus older talent? Or is this just the way wrestling's always been? You're always getting the veteran talent to put over the younger talent.
First of all, I mean, you made that comment in some previous Dave Meltzer category where this was like Hogan went to somebody to want to get a match with Kidman or whoever it was. Again, completely false. The talent wanted to kind of that younger talent, that group of talent we were talking about, wanted to work with a guy like Hulk Hogan, We went to Hulk and said, Hulk, this is the direction we're going. Here's why we're going to go in this direction. Here's some ideas that we have in mind. What do you think? He hemmed, he hawed. He wanted to think it through, try to understand the why of it all. Once he understood the why of it all, he was fully on board. He didn't believe, when I say he was fully on board, he was fully cooperative. In his heart, he didn't believe it was the right thing to do, but he was willing to be wrong. So that's the real situation, as opposed to, the whatever one, wherever else you heard it. But yeah, that's how that, the idea, it's a natural story, right? I mean, that story is as old as storytelling itself.
Yeah.
The young and the old and, transition, right? That's not an original thought process by anybody, but it was happening naturally. And we all thought, those of us in the creative side of things, for the most part, everybody agreed that, okay, if we could figure out a way to do it well, let's do that, because it is real. It's not an artificial made up story out of somebody's head that has no relationship to reality. This is a human condition that can be really entertaining. Let's do that.
We're seeing Dean Malenko doing his best promo work here. I like the idea of trying to get him involved with, some of the more headline talent. He won the, as silly as this sounds, but he was number one in the PWI 500 in 1997. And a lot of people started to really talk about this cruiserweight division as being innovative. And he's maybe the glue of that, where, if they had people who were working a Japanese style, or they had people who were working a lucha style, Dean Malenko could have a great match with any of those guys. And his style of wrestling started to gain a little more attention. And it was a stark contrast to the style that maybe headlined in the WWF or the Hulk Hogan era, or the Ultimate Warrior era, or what have you. Did you think that there was ever going to be big money in a performer like Dean Malenko? Or was he always just going to be a valuable team member, but maybe not glitzy enough to be a headliner in WCW?
If by big money, it probably means the same thing to you as it means to me, which would be, kind of that main event level status.
Yes.
Because Dean Malenko was making big money, even in the cruiserweight division, depending on what your definition of big money. And he was well into six figures, probably, compared to WWE, he was probably in the upper third of their financial roster, so to speak. So he was making good money. But I think your real question is, did I see him in that kind of main event role someday? And I would be dishonest if I said, oh, no, I saw him. He always had that potential. That would be dishonest. I didn't see him in that role. But I saw him as being incredibly valuable in just about any other role, all the way up into the main event. And I don't know. I think that's a pretty successful career achievement for a guy like Dean Malenko.
No doubt. Let's talk a little bit about where we are with Bret Hart. We've talked about this a little bit in the archives over at 83weeks.com. We mentioned at the top of the show that this show actually happened, this Monday Nitro we're watching from the Astrodome here on May 31st. This is actually the day that Owen was laid to rest. Hulk Hogan was going to attend that funeral, as would Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, and Woman. I'm sure you had no problem with any of those folks attending, but man, how do you approach a major loss like this, where so many of the folks in your locker room are close to him, and you've even got his own brother as a member of the locker room? How did you decide to handle that?
With as much grace as I possibly could, and still fulfill my obligations to the network I work for. I guess through my experience, 30 some odd years, probably 25 years at that point or whatever it was, one thing I've gotten pretty good at is accepting whatever reality I'm faced with and just finding a way to make it work, or making chicken salad out of chicken shit. It applies to a lot of things in life, man, not just wrestling. And I guess because of the amount of wrestling I've had to produce and so much of it live and the different personalities and situations and catastrophes and unfortunately, yes, including death, all of those things teach you over time that no matter how bad a situation is, you can find a way to work around it. No matter what it is, you can find a way to work around it. And it's best if you do it willingly and embrace it as an opportunity to, not to get heavy, but have grace or just have empathy, whatever, just be a nice person about it and give people room, whether they had to go to the funeral, whether it disrupted creative, whatever, it doesn't matter. None of that shit matters. In a situation like that, nothing matters. Give people the time to get through it on their own, and then we'll pick it back up again. It's that.
I know that there's no way for me to ask this without it feeling like we're trying to pile on somebody in particular. I'm not trying to do that. I am genuinely asking. Did WCW have any conversation at a corporate level, from an office level, however you want to call that, about what WCW would have done had a tragedy like what happened with Owen happened with WCW? Because at the time, the biggest discussion and debate was, should Vince have canceled the show and just called the show off? I think everybody, with the benefit of hindsight, has a different answer. You fortunately didn't have to make such a call, but did you have conversations about that after the fact?
Sure.
Or no?
Sure. Many. I mean, I tried to, in order to check myself, I tried to really ask myself, honestly, what would you have done? Because it could happen. I mean, that incident is shocking and devastating and horrible as it was. And you may hope it will never happen again. But guess what happened with Mark Bagwell in WCW not too long ago based on this point?
Yeah.
He turned out okay, but another half an inch either way, and he might not have walked away from that. So because of the incident with Owen, and especially under the circumstances, live television, all that, I had to do an audit. He said, what would you do, Eric? And my honest answer to myself, I don't know if I articulated it to anybody else. Maybe I did. I agreed with what Vince did. As cold as that sounds, I likely would have done the same thing. So yeah, debated that internally, talked about it with others, because I was really curious what I would do under those circumstances.
So you feel like you would have done that? Are you saying I would have still done the show and carried on with the show based on the information that you think he had at the time? Or I'm just trying to add context, because I don't know. It's just hard for me to imagine you saying that you would have continued the show if you knew he had passed away.
Well, again, I don't know what he knew, and we're all going to project and suggest we do know what he knew. When I say we all, not you and I, obviously, but I don't know. If I'm in the middle of the show, I see what I saw happen. I know there's a risk. Again, I don't know if Vince knew that Owen had passed or not. I don't know that. And I don't know that anybody else does either. But unless I knew, and even then, I'm not sure. It's hard for me now to put myself in that position again. It would have been devastating. I don't know if I'd have been capable of doing it, by the way. I don't know how I would have reacted under the pressure in terms of my ability to function and communicate and get everybody else on board, because now I'm not just making a decision to go on with the show. It's not just my decision. There's a whole lot of other people that are involved. From talent, some even in production. Gene Okerlund, Bobby Heenan, whole roster of guys in the locker room that had a personal relationship. So it's not about whether I want to do it, I would make that decision or not. It's okay if I make that decision, how am I going to effectively rally everybody else that may not agree with me? That's the decision, as much as is it the ethical or moral thing to do. That's one decision. The bigger decision is whether or not you're capable of doing the rest of it to execute. And I'd like to think I could pull it off, but I don't know. Back then, I don't know. I was a different person, different experiences, lack of the experience I have now when trying to think about what I do. I'm a different person now than I was then. So I'm not 100% sure. But based on what I knew at the time, I probably would have tried to continue the show. And here's why. For those of you who thought or would think that it was just a selfish, cold thing, I know what I would want as a talent. Absolutely. And that's all I got to work with. Everybody else has a different opinion. What would I want to happen? I honestly, without question, would want the show to go on, because that would be a sign of respect to me. Not everybody feels that way, but that's how I would feel. And that's all I got to work with in making a decision like that back then. It's all the tools I had.
Let me ask you, you've got Sting obviously doing similar stunts, from the top of the arena and rappelling down and things like that. Were there conversations or concerns about Sting doing something in the rafters, given what we just saw happen with Owen?
Absolutely. From Steve Borden, who played the character Sting, himself, Steve had strong questions, doubts, moral issues. By this time, Sting had fully embraced a strong connection to his faith. He had issues. I want to be sure he was doing the right thing for himself. Again, same situation. I had to check myself to make sure that I was doing the right thing all the way around for everybody, the right thing. A lot of talent. Again, a lot of people that were in my locker room that had spent a lot of time in the WWE locker room with Owen. And I never met one of those people that didn't speak about Owen in just the most respectful, loving way. There's nobody that will badmouth Owen. Everybody loved him that knew him. So same thing, everybody had issues with it. And we just talked through it. It started from the top down, saying, how do you feel? Let's dig in and figure this out. Because if Steve Borden would have said, I'm not comfortable doing it anymore, that's the end of the conversation. None of the rest of it mattered. What I wanted to do, what my choice is, all the other elements of a decision like that doesn't matter. If the talent doesn't want to do it, that's the end of the conversation. But there was more to it than that. And Steve and I talked through it, and Steve agreed that he was comfortable. I had a lot of conversations with Ellis Edwards, who was our stunt guy. He set that stunt up. He created that stunt. He executed every one of them that Sting did in that Crow character era flawlessly. Not only with Sting, but with others. Sting hauling DDP up from the ground is another one. So Ellis was instrumental in the conversation as to whether to move forward with that stunt or not. Once I got through those two conversations and felt comfortable with them, then it's up to me. What do I want to do? I made my decision. And then it went downhill from there. Downhill meaning then I went down. Then I got the downstream conversations had to happen. Talent, production, everybody else. Those conversations took place, and we made the decision we made. Good or bad. Take your pick.
If things would have wound up a little differently, we know that after the Montreal screw job, Bret Hart's going to come to WCW. David Boy Smith is going to come to WCW. Jim Neidhart is going to come to WCW. Rick Rude is going to come to WCW. Owen Hart never does. Owen Hart winds up re-signing, staying with the WWF. Do you think perhaps if Owen would have came over to WCW, I mean, I don't think he would have been in the rafters. Certainly that might not have happened. But do you think that Brett's WCW run could have been different as well if Owen would have joined him? Do you think maybe, Brett would have had more fun and things turned out a little differently for Brett in WCW had Owen been there?
Undoubtedly. And I'm so firm in that because I met Bret Hart at the airport immediately after Owen was announced to have passed. Bret was in midair at that point in time. Bret was on his way to Los Angeles to meet me, or I was there. I was at the airport to meet Bret on that flight. It was a later night flight. I think he got in around 10 or 11 or whatever it was. And I didn't know that the Air Canada was able to find a way to reach the captain on the flight that Bret Hart was on his way to LA to meet me. I didn't know that happened. This was long before cell phones and Wi-Fi on your plane and the ability to whatever, text and all that. None of that existed. So I went to the airport knowing what had happened, knowing that believing that Bret was going to come off the plane and not know. So I had to prepare myself to be the one to tell him. I'm just giving you the context. Bret got off the plane, and the minute I laid eyes on him, there was hardly anybody at the airport that night. Again, it was a later night flight in the terminal. And I spotted Bret from, halfway across the terminal, and I could tell he already knew. And from that point forward, that was a heavy bag to carry. That was some heavy luggage that Bret carried with him all the time. So you asked me, do you think it would have been different? Absolutely would have been different. I don't know how. Only Bret can answer that. But I know how bad the situation was and how much it hurt Bret. Only common sense would suggest that not having that baggage, things would have been different, right? So yeah, I'm 100% sure things would have been different.
We just saw Conan tagging with Rey Mysterio Jr. to take on Bobby Duncombe Jr. and Kurt Hennig. They had a lot of fun. Conan and Mysterio are going to pick up the win in just under 5 minutes. I want to ask one more thing about Bret Hart, and then we'll move along here. We talked about this before. Kevin Nash had been on the Tonight Show throwing out this open challenge. He's wanting to go after Bret Hart. He's saying that, he's not been a supporter of our federation, blah, blah, blah. And he's throwing out a challenge here. And we know that Bret was supposed to be there, and you just sort of ran through how you're getting word to the pilot. And well, all the silly wrestling stuff goes out the window when this real life stuff happens with Owen. But I think that this match that we were teasing here, Bret Hart and Kevin Nash, was supposed to happen maybe at the Astrodome here. So maybe that's another reason, while a lot of the critics are ready to pile on and say, oh, they're less than half of where they were last time. Well, they had Bam Bam Bigelow and Goldberg with the undefeated streak for the world title on deck there that have been promoted to headline. And you were probably building towards Bret and Kevin Nash here, but that's obviously out the window. Not trying to make excuses, just trying to add context. You did have a big plan here. It just got derailed. Life got in the way.
Yeah, like I said, Bret was on his way to sit down with Jay Leno on the Tonight Show, which at that time, people say whatever they want. People that weren't around back then don't realize how big of a platform, Jay Leno's Tonight Show was. It was probably the best opportunity on television to get the word out to our audience, the 18 to 49-year-old audience and above. And Bret was on his way to do that, to launch this. And yeah, things could have been different, right? Easy to point fingers when you've never been in the business. Easy to have solutions and astute observations about something you've never experienced. Happens in life, right?
We got Randy Savage out here cutting a promo. He's bigger than ever. Medusa is doing a run in here, and they're going to announce Randy Savage versus Kevin Nash for later in the show. We've also got a crazy match coming up next that maybe you never thought you'd see on Nitro. Certainly not in 1999. But David Flair is about to wrestle Eric Watts. This is a crazy story, of course. We've put Ric Flair in a position of power. He's trying to abuse that power, push his son, just like with Eric Watts. We said that once before on TV. So now we're actually bringing Eric Watts in. Tori Wilson, of course, is going to be a part of the presentation. Of course, Arn Anderson is going to be involved. I mean, we're basically doing a spoof of nepotism. What do you think of that creative on the surface, Eric?
I have mixed emotions about it. My first emotion, the predominant one, is I kind of dig it because it's real. I mean, there's just, it's almost like it's like a testosterone-based version of self-deprecating humor. That's the best way I can frame it. It's people can relate to it. They understand it. They've seen it at work. They've seen it at school. They've seen it in their community. I mean, nepotism is everywhere. Look at the United Kingdom. They got kings and queens and shit, right? So it's a part of life. And I think if you find an interesting way to exploit that, again, human condition, I think that's it could be the premise, the basis, the foundation of a really good story.
Well, we see Canyon laying down in the back, and let me give you the foundation of a very good story. You got to be ready. And I'm talking about ready for Father's Day. And if you haven't purchased a Father's Day gift yet, give me a blink. Yeah, we thought so. Well, today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the leaders in below the waist grooming. Make your pops day here. Maybe he's had a bush since the 70s. Well, that's okay. Our friends at Manscaped can take care. They have crafted the total package for his special day, whether it's the boy's downstairs, his beard, or even the best underwear out there. Manscaped can cover all of dad's bases. Head on over to manscaped.com, get 20% off plus free shipping when you use our code 83 weeks. Go from daddy to zaddy. You can trust Manscaped. And you know that beard trimmer that your dad's been using since grade school? Well, it's probably time to upgrade it. I want to introduce you to the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. It's the complete beard maintenance kit for all of our bearded kings. This all-in-one kit has the Beard Hedger. That's Manscaped's most advanced beard trimmer, as well as the shampoo, the conditioner, the oil, and the balm for his beard. It also comes with a brush and a comb and scissors. He can look like the true Southern gentleman he is. By the way, the face shaver, the handyman face shaver from Manscaped, man, that's what he needs. It fits in every travel case. It's perfect for his next trip. And their Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, man, that's got the Lawnmower 5.0. That's badass. Plus, you've got the new shears deal that takes care of all the nail clippers. It's a 5-piece precision nail grooming kit. It's got everything he needs, all with professional grade stainless steel tools. And let's also mention that the underwear you got him for Christmas back in 1992, that's ready for an upgrade too. Let's get dad the Manscaped Boxers 2.0. They're the most comfortable boxers around because they've got this jewel pouch. Yeah, it's a dedicated space to cradle your stones. Roll tight on that. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you use the code 83 weeks at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code 83 weeks. Never forget where you came from, if you know what I mean. Happy Father's Day from Manscaped. Man, talking about Father's Day as we got Eric Watts wrestling David Flair. How about that for timing?
This is perfect. No, I don't know, Conrad. I can't remember. Perhaps you have it in your notes there, or you remember. Did Eric come in just for this spot, or was he was still on the roster, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't here a long time, but he certainly was in and out. And I think he kind of got a bad. I felt like he always got a raw deal. Would you agree with that? I mean,
100%.
yeah.
I actually feel I feel bad that I wasn't a little more, what's the word, empathetic. I didn't give him a little more attention and opportunity to kind of overcome the stigma. And that's what I mean. I mean, he was in a shit. He was in a hole the first day he stepped into the company because the general attitude towards Bill Watts was not good. And then to bring in his son, which any wrestler is going to hate anyway, it's hard enough to maintain your role in the company without the booker's son, who's never really worked before, coming in, because what's going to happen. It's just a question of who's going to be affected by it, not if they're going to be affected by it. So that's the environment that Eric Watts, or by the way, any second generation or third generation wrestler, young wrestler who's breaking into the business, is going to have to face, because it's a fact. And I think Eric probably experienced that on the highest level, again, because of Bill's reputation and relationship with just about everybody in WCW at that time, other than probably Jim Ross.
Watts had a couple of matches, I guess 3 in 1996 with WWE. He did a dark match with you guys in 1998. And then he was back in WCW come February of 99, coming back to do a worldwide taping, then Saturday night. Then he would find himself on a Thunder, a house show, a tackling dummy for Bam Bam Bigalow on Nitro. He's going to stick around here from February until November before he's out of there, pops his head up for a couple of shows in ECW. And then, of course, we know later he would show up in NWA TNA. But, man, it just didn't work out for Eric Watts. It didn't really work out for David Flair either. But David Flair accompanied to the ring here by Tori Wilson. And then in real life, his girlfriend, Stacy Keibler.
And there's that.
It's
like everywhere I go, when we start talking about David Flair, it's like, man, how'd you let him do that? Oh man, you should have never put him on TV. Oh, how could Ric Flair let us get blah, fucking blah? And I go, yeah, but it was okay. That Stacy Keibler thing, it was all right. He did good.
He's making hundreds of thousands of dollars before he can legally even rent a car.
But we abused him.
And his girlfriend is Stacy Keibler. Fuck him.
Oh, she went out with, what's his name? Who's the famous actor?
George Clooney.
George Clooney, yeah. Yeah, she has, I mean, come on.
It worked out.
Don't feel bad for David Flair.
No, I hate him then, now, forever. How about that Arn Anderson spine buster right there? Damnation, it never gets old.
But I don't think David really wanted to be in that role. I'm not convinced that he was convinced, he meaning David, that he really wanted to be in that role. I think he was doing it. There were other motivations, personal ones probably. Maybe wanting to get closer to his dad, maybe wanting to follow in his dad's footsteps, from a selfish perspective. But I don't think he was 100% convinced. He put his toe in the water and he came out just fine, but it wasn't for him.
We got the father-son photo there of David Flair and his father, Rick. There's another father-son duo making some headlines that we should probably mention. It's come out since we last recorded and we were together, Eric, that Mark Henry did not re-sign with AEW. He's going to be departing the company. His contract expired this past Tuesday on the 28th. So the day after Memorial Day. So on actual Memorial Day, Mark Henry went on Busted Open and announced, hey, that's it. I'm leaving AEW. And we've also seen his son, now getting that scholarship. He's going to go to Oklahoma. Of course, I'm sure that's tough for Mark Henry. He's a big Texas guy. But I somehow have a sneaking suspicion that we've not heard the last of Mark Henry in the wrestling space. What do you think's next for Mark?
Whatever Mark wants. He's an amazingly talented guy. I've really become pretty good friends with Mark really over the last couple of years. I never really worked with him, enough to matter to get to know him. But, I see him out on the trail. And spend as much time with him as I can. I've done a lot of interviews with him. I recently did an entirely different streaming project And Mark happened to be a part of it. And I dig the guy. He's smart. He's got a very, very good intuition and perspective, not just on wrestling, but life. He's a pretty cool cat. And he's good. He can do whatever he wants to do. But if that means ending up in some role in WWE, he'll be great at it, whatever it is, because he's a pro. Looking forward to it. I'm sure it'll work out great for him.
We want to give a shout out to Travis Medway, who gifted 583 weeks with Eric Bischoff membership.
Whoa, Travis. Thank you, brother.
Greatly appreciate that. Check out our membership options over at 83weeks.com. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. If you're like,
can I jump in,
Yep.
Conrad?
Please do.
As far as our memberships over at 83 Weeks, you get different content than you're getting anywhere else. I'll check in, every day, every other day. I'll share whatever's going through my mind at the moment. But the other day, I had Mrs. B, my wife, film as we were in our kitchen. I'm with my nephew, Grayson, who is now a chef. He just graduated from the Culinary Institute of America. And we have a friend by the name of Deshaun. Actually, Deshaun and Grayson work together and are good friends. Anyway, Deshaun's family's from India. And Deshaun had a bunch of spices and ghee and different types of Indian food that he brought over from a recent trip in India. And both Deshaun and Grayson made Lori and I, because it was my birthday, my favorite Indian food, which happens to be butter chicken. And anyway, we put that on video and sent it off exclusively to members. So you also get some fun shit that's got nothing to do with wrestling too.
So 83weeks.com is where you can check that out. And if you're liking what you're seeing, throw us a thumbs up. If you're hating what you're seeing, throw us a thumbs down, or just want to hear from you. Looking to get that feedback, drop us a comment. We are monitoring those comments. Travis also had this note for us. Happy birthday, Eric. Any chances of seeing you in Las Vegas next year for WrestleMania? Continued thanks for calling my friend Richard out. Have a great birthday. Yeah, let's talk about that. WrestleMania next year is on Easter. I guess they're getting a boatload from Las Vegas to bring the show Easter weekend to Las Vegas. Happy for WWE. That's going to be a little different. You think you'll find your way out to Las Vegas on Easter weekend next year, Eric?
I think there's a really good shot. I love going into Vegas during off-peak periods. Like, one of my favorite experiences in Las Vegas, not just mine, but Lori's, my wife's, Mrs. B, also my kids, Garrett, Montana. I let each of them bring a friend, and we went to Thanksgiving several years ago. We went to Las Vegas for Thanksgiving. There was nobody there. It's like we owned the joint. And it's fun because, you can get, I get just oversensitized, man. It's just too much after about 3 days. The noise, the lights, the smells, the sounds, all of it just kicks my ass after about 48 hours. But on a weekend like Thanksgiving or Easter, it's way more fun. You just have easier access to everything, and it's not crowded. You don't get oversensitized. Bells and whistles and cigarette smoke and all the other that comes with Vegas. So no, man, I dig it. And I can see us. In fact, Lori and I have done it. We did it not only for Thanksgiving, we did spend an Easter in Las Vegas one year. Same thing, man. Great restaurants. They're all open. Guess what? They're only about 25% full at that time. So hell yeah. In fact, I'm going to put it on my calendar, for crying out loud. It sounds like a good time to me.
We got Ernest the Cat Miller coming to the ring with Sonny Ono. That sounds like they're on their way to your house for a barbecue right now.
Hey, they're coming out here in August. Both Sonny and Ernest are coming out. We're doing a charity golf and softball event.
We've also got the Ernest Miller character here. He's going to be wrestling Scott Norton, and that's an interesting matchup, to say the least. Let's do another question here from Denovia Smack. Happy birthday, Eric. Eric and Conrad, is there any way we can get a live 83 weeks at the Mall of America during SummerSlam weekend in 2026? Book it now. Hey, that's kind of interesting. They did announce that SummerSlam 2026 will be a 2-night event, Eric. So not just a one-night SummerSlam like WrestleMania. It'll be 2 nights, and it's going to be in Minneapolis. Hey, we could have some fun at the Mall of America that weekend, no?
Man, why did that not occur to me? Why am I not seeing this in my head before anybody else? This is crazy good. This is crazy fucking good. We need to get on this, Conrad.
I agree. It's a good idea. So stay tuned, boys and girls. We'll make
Thank you, Genovius. You're the man. This is why I love our members so much and the people that follow us. Ad-free shows, 83weeks.com. We got some smart mucker fathers over there thinking, even for us.
If we do it, Denovius, we're going to have you introduce us and bring us on stage because it was your idea now.
Yes, that's how that's done. I love it.
Travis Medway says, hey, Eric, which of the following modern methods would have most advanced WCW back in 1999? Twitter. Boy, that's interesting to think about if Twitter was around for WCW. YouTube. Could have been interesting to see what the global audience thought. High definition. On demand. Wow, DVRs instead. Or internet shopping. Now that's interesting. Maybe you could just click your phone on the side twice and bam, the new NWO shirt's on the way. Which one of those do you think would have been the biggest help for WCW in 1999? Twitter, YouTube, HD, on demand, or internet shopping?
I think maybe it's because I'm biased and I'm having so much fun on YouTube, and I'm so late to the game. I'm almost embarrassed to talk about it, but what the hell? I've done other stupid shit or embarrassing shit. I am so fired up about YouTube right now that none of these options would have made any difference in the world individually. But I think if we would have combined coherent, structured storytelling with YouTube in particular, I think that would have been our quickest return on investment, because it would have allowed us to take our core content and recreate shorter versions in a different type of context and get multiple use and value, as well as exposing the product to an entirely different audience that may not already be watching, which is called growing your audience. It's a rare thing outside of WWE today, but that would have been the biggest opportunity.
We've got a big opportunity to see Ernest the Cat Miller here doing a little bit of a promo, and here comes Scott Norton. At this time here in WCW, the NWO is not really the priority that maybe it once was. And you've said before that if you had, one major regret above all else, you wish that there would have been a proper finish to a story for the NWO. Have you ever sat down and thought about maybe working on what that could look like, finishing the story of the NWO?
At various times, for various lengths of time, sometimes fleeting moments, sometimes mostly as a result of a conversation or question. If I'm on a panel or even just in a private conversation and it comes up, I don't think about it much beyond that. But if I did, it could be fascinating, especially in a what if scenario. What if there was just, what if anything that my imagination that could have been possible during that period of time, not just waving a magic wand, Undertaker coming on, none of that wild, wacky armchair quarterbacking bullshit. But I mean, if I could somehow put myself in a place in a universe where everything that was possible to me then would be possible to me, would be available to me now, but with the added element of my experience after the fact. It'd be fun, but that right there is the most thought I've given to it, personally. Other people I've talked to have, but personally, that's as much actual depth of thought that I've given that subject. Be fun.
Watching a fun match here, and next up we're going to have Randy Savage come out, and he's going to bring a fake Kevin Nash wearing a dress. And Meltzer is going to write this. Anyway, since Savage can't work at all anymore, the women, because this is the era where Savage comes to the ring with a lot of ladies. The women take turns doing spots with transvestite Nash. That's what Dave wrote. Miss Madness did a cool Frankensteiner off the top. Gorgeous George dropped an elbow on him with the middle, and then Savage did the elbow off the top. Since the move was banned twice now in 2 weeks, the ref didn't DQ Savage and instead counted the pin at 238. And that is worth mentioning. In this same show, we would hear Ric Flair say, hey, the elbow off the top rope is banned. And yeah, here comes Randy Savage to do the move. What do you remember of this creative? Hey, we're going to have him challenge Kevin Nash, but later when quote unquote Kevin Nash comes out, it's not Kevin Nash, but a person in a wig. This is kind of silly. No,
It's all silly. We were grasping at straws. I was in and out of creative mentally. I may have been there physically for meetings and so forth and listening, but mentally, I was detached as I could possibly have been and still be considered part of the process. And it was just, look, it was desperation. We're trying different things. We're working around different situations. But more importantly, we're just trying to do something that would get attention. And, you know, when you start, I'll speak for me. I always say when you, meaning the world, but for me, anytime I'm trying to be creative or trying to solve a problem, whether it's creative or otherwise, when I'm under the wrong kind of pressure, I absolutely get horrible results because I think there's a good kind of pressure, the pressure to be the best you could be, the pressure to reach a goal, the pressure to achieve something positive. Those are all, I love that kind of pressure. I work really well under that kind of pressure. But when it's an adverse pressure, when you're on defense, when you're trying to put fires out as opposed to building buildings, you're saving them from being burned down. That's a whole different kind of energy and pressure. And it's really hard for me to be creative in that environment. And that really best describes what, not just me, but the entire staff, the creative staff, the production staff, my secretaries. At that point, I had two because they had to relieve each other every 2 or 3 hours to get the fuck away from me. It's probably true. That's why I'm giggling. It's probably was true. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough. And it shows up on the screen, doesn't it? It's the difference between a coherent, exciting, well-structured, you know, some story that you anticipate next week. It's called episodic television. That's a fancy way of saying just episodic television. Well-structured story that you would anticipate. That's what I mean by that. Episodic television. And when you're on that roll and you're hitting those beats and everything's flowing, it's awesome. But when it's not, it blows.
What do you think of this presentation of Randy Savage with not one, not two, but essentially 3 valets? Medusa in a business suit, Miss Madness in a pageant dress. We know she's going to go on to become Molly Holly, and Gorgeous George, the real life girlfriend of Randy Savage. And as I understand it, his family secured the trademark for Gorgeous George. And maybe that was a name that Lenny Poffo and a character that he was going to assume, try and pick up with the OG Gorgeous George. Instead, it goes to his lady friend, his valet. What do you think of this presentation with those 3 in tow?
Not much. I mean, even looking at it now, just with my producer's hat on and not my, you know, I was in charge back then and I had personal relationships with these people, but just now, you know, if I came out of a fucking spaceship and sat down and analyzed this based on the experience I have now, it was overkill. If there's a reason to have a valet, if it's part of a story or if it's part of the presentation for whatever reason, which I don't believe in, by the way, but if I did, then pick one and make it mean something. Create a reason for it. Create a relationship for it. Create a backstory for it. Create something for it, as opposed to just showing up as eye candy. The fuck is that? How one-dimensional could someone be in creating a character, in this case, a new character with Randy? And yeah, you could bring in the shiny objects, not to be dismissive of the women involved, but that's essentially what they were, bright, shiny, sexy objects with no other relationship than that. Waste. It's a waste of talent with the women. It's a waste of TV time because it's not going to matter. No one's going to care. They're not going to like you more or less. It's just pretty, colorful, a little sexy. It always works. It's TV. But yeah.
What do you make of what we're watching right now? I'll be honest. I think I had blocked this out of my memory. I was consuming everything I could here in May of 99, but I had no recollection until we're watching this show back here about Big Sexy in an evening gown, Miss Big Sexy in an evening gown, and high heels, or maybe not high heels, but heels. What are we watching, Eric?
I don't know. I'm confused. I'm embarrassed. And I'm half-assed to entertain. I hate to admit it, but it's kind of fucking hilarious now. But in the context of then, what the fuck?
As a reminder, you guys are head to head with Monday Night Raw in this era.
Oh, I knew this was coming. Oh, of course. On Monday Night Raw, they've got Undertaker wrestling somebody, and I've got Kevin Nash in drag.
The Undertaker's wrestling somebody named Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I didn't even know that.
Triple H will be wrestling somebody named Mankind in a hardcore match. Vince McMahon is also in singles action against The Undertaker. Big Show's wrestling Mr. Ass. Beaver Cleavage has Mrs. Cleavage, and they're going to pick up a win over Christian. Jeff Jarrett's going to wrestle The Godfather with some hoes for the Intercontinental title. Road Dogg's working with Big Boss Man. The Acolytes are taking on X-Pac and Kane. Val Venus is with Ken Shamrock. But you nailed it. Let me guess. The Undertaker's doing something with somebody. Yeah, the biggest somebody of them all. Yeah, Mark of the Quad, Moline, Illinois, somehow getting a bigger show than the Astrodome.
I'm laughing, Conrad, because I knew this was going to happen. I knew, despite the fact that we were still put 15,000 people in the arena and drew a $400,000 or $500,000 house and had a 4-point-something rating that was only down 2% from a record year just the year before. I knew, despite all that good shit, there was going to be a moment, just like the one we're experiencing, where you're running down what they're doing and I'm looking what I was doing and going, what the fuck were we thinking?
Let me give you the numbers here. On May 31st, boy, you have the first hour do a 3.7. The second hour does a 3.1. The third hour does a 3.0. So your average is a 3.3.
It's actually
meanwhile, Monday Night Raw does a 5.8 and a 6.7. So the composite rating is a 6.3. So it winds up a 3.3 to a 6.3. So yes, the WWF is firmly in control, but that's not a bad rating. Boy, today it'd be high fives all around to get that.
No. Today they would rename the network after you if you did that on a wrestling show. Because that 3.3, we're talking ratings then versus viewers now. That 3.3 was probably about 4.5 million viewers on a conservative side. So yeah, you deliver that every week for 52 weeks, they'd name the network after you. Sorry, Mr. Turner. Really appreciate everything you've done for the network. You've been awesome. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Enjoy that ranch out in Montana, because now this is the blank, fill in the blank network, because you have a wrestling show that delivered 4.5 million viewers at its low point.
Eric, our producer, stupid ass Dave Silva, he has just told us that he just realized now watching this show back for the third time. He was at this show.
Ha! Even Dave tried to put it out of his mind. But he's forced to watch this, and now he's got PTSD. He remembers he went to Houston and went, what the fuck?
Bobby has a fun question here. He says, when the Nitro set changed, what was done with the old set? Did they use it in any way since the new logo debuted? I know it wound up being used or being purchased by the WWE. I think Ben Brown actually has those big diamond plate WCW letters that we all loved on the old set. But did you guys set that up at like the power plant or anything, or did it just go to storage, do you think?
I don't even know, man. I don't even know. I don't even know if WCW had a storage plant or storage area. I would imagine if we did anything with it, we probably stuck it in the warehouse, which was also the power plant. Be my guess. I
know for sure you had
I bet
storage.
you would. Yeah, I knew you would know better than I would.
Well, I was just going to say, I know for sure you had storage because you personally kept JR from his appliances. You fucked him around on his mini fridge and his washer.
Right. You want to get to a man's mind? You want to break a man down? You want to go some Sun Tzu motherfucking war on somebody? You hold on to their fridge and refuse to give it back.
The mini fridge.
Oh, that makes it worse.
Yeah.
Because the mini fridge you could take with you. You could carry it around with you. You put it in your new apartment.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want. You hold on to a man's mini fridge, you've gone to fucking war.
Them's fighting words, Eric.
There you go.
Eric Green wants to know, why the rotating third person at the announce table throughout the night? Did you have any preferences or have anyone that did better than expected? Let's talk about that third seat, because you would change that hour to hour.
Because despite what announcers think of themselves, not all of them, some of them like Tony Schiavone, he knows. Jim Ross, he knows. More is not better. 3 hours of listening to the same three people carrying 90% of a narrative, a dialogue in a show is fucking boring. I don't care how good they are. You just get tired of it. Good color and play-by-play, which I think is lacking with but very few exceptions. I think it is lacking so badly. I think it is the most easily solved issue and could potentially have the greatest overall impact on one's product with just minor adjustments. It's a glaring Achilles heel that could be fixed with a fucking Band-Aid instead of surgery. And at the core of that comment and observation that I hold so dearly yet firmly is you need to rotate just different voices, different perspectives over a 3-hour period. Otherwise, it turns into just noise, and it's distracting noise at best. When the audience starts tuning out the dialogue of a show, because there's two narratives in a wrestling show. Well, basically, you have the spoken word, which is primarily your play-by-play and color guys, and occasionally you have promos in the ring or backstage. The rest of the dialogue is physical dialogue, which means your color and play-by-play guy has to tell the story, or at least that's what they should be doing. But instead, what they're doing today to draw a parallel or to draw an analysis, what we're doing today is, for example, on the Double or Nothing pay-per-view that you and I watched and then reviewed, and I didn't even talk about this in review because, frankly, I was tired, exhausted, wasn't on my game. But you had three, and this is Tony too, and as much as I love and respect Tony, and I do, he's a much better play-by-play guy than I would ever been if I would have stuck with it throughout my entire career, okay? Make a point of that. That being said, you had three guys all doing color commentary.
Yeah.
Nobody was telling a fucking story. The whole 9.5 or 12 hours of that pay-per-view, or whatever it really was, it just felt that long. There was no dialogue, no narrative about any of the reasons why, in a real story kind of perspective, any of what we were seeing was actually happening, or what the implications of what we were seeing while they were all doing color commentary instead of play-by-play and commentary. There was no discussion throughout the entire 37 hours of that pay-per-view about the implications of where anybody goes from here in any meaningful way. Mind blown. So when I'm asked why 3 people, it's to keep the audience from tuning them out and trying to keep it fresh by interchanging not just personalities, but perspectives and styles.
We're watching an old school Nitro here from 1999. What's been the most surprising thing watching this back for you today, Eric?
The crowd. I fully expected, because we talked about doing this last week and I knew it was coming. And I can sit through anything if the crowd's lit up, because the crowd tells me whether I should be enjoying something or not. If the crowd's really reacting and I'm kind of ambivalent, it's like, well, maybe I'm not paying close attention. What am I missing here? Because they're having fun. I want to have fun. Well, if they're having fun, I'm going to have fun. So fuck it. I'm going to have fun watching them have fun. I mean, that's kind of how I watch wrestling sometimes. And to see the crowd, not only this big of a crowd, which is definitely shocking for May of 99, but to see the energy and some that we're getting from that crowd in some of these matches that I wouldn't expect.
I'm having a fun time watching this show from way back when. Of course, we've got Bobby Eaton working with Buff Bagwell here. Buff's going to pull it off. And I feel like Buff would love our sponsor today, Mando. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? You got to try Mando. I think you're going to absolutely love it. And I want to remind everybody that my wife actually introduced me to this product, actually in a different way. Lumi for men. That's really what it is. It's Lumi whole body deodorant. My wife has been using this for a while, and I've even seen some of the commercials on TV. Well, now they've got Lumi for men. It's the same clinically proven, doctor-developed formula, but for cologne quality scents for men. It's called Mando. And there's a lot of great different scents. I think you're going to find something that you like, but I really enjoy it. And what I really like is that Mando is made from mandelic acid. And that's like an alpha hydroxy acid that blocks the sweat-eating bacteria on your skin. And that's really what causes the odor. And so when it does this, you don't ever even smell in the first place. And you can put it anywhere. And I mean anywhere. Your pits, your packages, your belly buttons, your butt cracks, your stinky crevices, your stomach folds, even your feet. It really is whole body deodorant. And Mando was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was just being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And Mando whole body deodorant is powerful enough for the toughest body odor, but gentle enough to use anywhere, even your family jewels. And you don't have to worry, because Mando is aluminum free, baking soda free, cruelty free, dye free, and they're going to get you stink free. It's also vegan, and it's been clinically proven to control odor better than just a shower with soap alone. It turns out 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor is a 5 out of 10. But with Mando, the average grundle odor is a 0 out of 10. This is going to pay dividends, especially during the summer, boys. Roll Tide. Mando has a great starter pack that's perfect for Father's Day too. It comes with a solid stick deodorant. It comes with cream tube deodorant, and you've got 2 free products of your choice. Really cool stuff like mini body wash and deodorant wipes. They've even got free shipping. Give the man in your life the gift of aluminum-free whole body deodorant. Now, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack. Shop Mando's Father's Day bundle with the code 83weeks at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Seeing quite a show here. We've got Perry Saturn out cutting a promo right now. And we just saw Buff Bagwell pick up a win over Bobby Eaton. Now we're going to see Perry Saturn, who's going to come in as a tag team champion here. And he's going to take on Diamond Dallas Page and Bam Bam Bigalow. So it's a 2-on-1 aspect here. That's going to get some fans behind Perry Saturn. But they're going to go like 11 minutes and 44 seconds in a handicap match. That's pretty crazy. What do you think of the way Diamond Dallas Page was being used here in 99, Eric, after having such a successful 97 and 98. It does feel like at times he was a little lost. I mean, he wins the world title in 99, but now he's into this like just a month later. Things are changing quickly for DDP here.
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm looking at it now, and I'm liking it even less than I liked it then. Obviously, I went with it. Didn't put up a fight. That's on me. But I don't think Page had reached his potential as the babyface Page. I mean, it's too quick of a turn. And just watching him walk out and watching the crowd react, I can't hear them because I have it turned down for purposes of this. But I can tell by looking at the crowd, they're not buying this character the way they bought the babyface DDP. And I think he shifted gears too quick. And there's probably reasons for it. Desperation being at the top of the list, more than likely. But it's not working. Didn't work then. And clearly looking at it now, I'm looking at it differently now than I would have then. But even looking at it the way I look at it now, it's not working. Not as well as what he had previously. You're going to turn somebody, you're going to change somebody's character. Again, why? Is it a strategic reason creatively? You got wrestling, you got an idea for a story you want to build? Great. Is the character as a babyface been tired and been doing it too long and is no longer as effective? Much like Hulk Hogan was in 1995, 94. After the new car smell wore off in WCW, then you started getting a different kind of a reaction. If not opposite reaction, at least a diminished reaction. Now it's time. I don't think Page had reached that time yet to change his character. I think it was a mistake.
We've had a lot of fun watching this old Nitro from 1999, and as a reminder, we've still got another match and more story coming up. Kevin Nash is going to come out in a big truck and he's going to corner Randy Savage's limo, and then he's going to pour sewage through the sunroof onto him and the girls. And Meltzer would say this was something you'd expect from Steve Austin on a WWF show. It was a great idea, but somehow it looked cheesy because of the camera work. Nash then said the segment was sponsored by the sewage company. That was funny as well. The following week, Eric, is when we do the now infamous Hummer angle that fans have been obsessed with for over 20 years. I got to tell you, though, when I'm seeing stuff like this, I kind of agree with Dave. It feels like a Stone Cold bit. And a friend of mine, a really smart entrepreneur that I know, like, and trust and respect a great deal, he's hammered into me that sometimes in business you can be better than, less than, or different than. And when I see Kevin Nash running around with a big truck putting doo-doo in a sunroof, it feels a little less than Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was doing it first with concrete trucks and beer trucks. Oh my, Zambonis. I don't know. What say you?
Well, first of all, thank you. And secondly, there's not a better illustration of what we both agree to be true when it comes to better than, less than, or different than. This is so obviously less than for all the reasons you've already pointed out. And again, I hate to keep going back to this, but it's so important to me that people understand at least why I have the perspective I have. You don't have to agree with me. I hope that most people or some people don't, because I enjoy a good debate, because I learn shit sometimes when it's a good debate and different perspectives that are based in experience and observation. But we see this today. We're seeing, we look at AEW and people talk about what's going wrong and why are they losing viewers and why are people not buying tickets. It's because a lot of what we see today is 180 degree departure from what was stated to be the vision for the company 5 years ago when it started. And a lot of the scenes that we see and the elements that we see are indeed less than a lot of the things that we've seen in WWE, and in some cases all the way back to WCW, going to the silly-ass Tony Khan Elite storyline, which is basically a really piss-poor derivative of the NWO story. barely, just enough to make you go, yeah, maybe, because it was so poorly executed. It's not that coming up with original ways to present this product, I think, is critical to its, not only its growth, but to its existence. That's what we need to see more of today. When I look at WWE, you know what I see, Conrad, especially the pay-per-view you and I covered last week? I see a definite commitment to go back to the future with regard to the strongest elements of what's made professional wrestling work as a television product longer than almost any genre of television other than the news. It's going back to story and character. It's going back to episodic TV in WWE. And what I see, and I've started watching TNA a little bit more now so that I can contribute and have an opinion, at least valid one, honest one. But I've started to watch some TNA and I see it there too. What we see in AEW is exactly the opposite of that. It's great athleticism, dangerous stuff. I mean, Will Ospreay came damn near close to being a Marcus Bagwell story within the first 5 minutes of last week's pay-per-view. Fucking ridiculous. I see AEW going in this extreme athleticism, technical expertise, because I'm seeing chain wrestling with some guys like Will Ospreay, and there are others. You know, the technical skills they have are fucking amazing. But the product itself isn't, because they're abandoning the very basics of what makes wrestling work and what draws people to it and retains that audience. And I'm seeing it here. We made that same mistake here in 1999 with me in charge as president of the company. I fucked that shit up, which is why I have the opinions I have. I've been there and I've done that. And it's easier for me to see. Maybe that's why I don't really have a lot of people that agree with the things that I say or see, because I see them differently than a lot of people. I don't watch wrestling like everybody else watches wrestling. Most of the time, I don't.
We're watching some interesting wrestling here. It's CDP and Bam Bam Bigalow taking on Perry Saturn in a handicap match. Somehow it's going to take the guys nearly 12 minutes to beat him. And let's remember, less than a month ago, DDP beat Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. Randy Savage was there. Sting was there. It's wild to think that he's beat all these guys in the last month. And with Perry Saturn, even with Bam Bam Bigalow, tough.
Yeah, and that's part of Paige, right? Paige is a giver. And I know Paige and Perry were close. You know, Paige always had an affinity for people who were from the East Coast. That's where Paige, grew up. That's where he had a lot of his experiences. And he just related. That's why he was excited about working with Bam Bam for the very reason. I mean, I think they grew up in the same neighborhood. So Paige was one of those guys that was capable of giving too much. And certainly the cases we watched with Perry Saturn. Nothing against Perry, but for all the reasons you stated, and to go from working with the Hogans and the Savages and the Flairs to, at this point, nothing against Perry Saturn, but where Perry was positioned in the eyes of the audience, not my eyes, but in the eyes of the audience, and to have to give up so much didn't help Paige at all and actually didn't benefit Perry.
Let's do a few questions here. Travis Medway says, as you got more combative with the network, were there corporate individuals using the WWF ratings to attack you and or go to work or go to war with you? That's interesting, I guess. Were you hearing about from your critics within Turner, the folks who didn't really want wrestling on the network anyway? Were they mentioning WWE ratings to you at this point, or was it more about the bottom line and not necessarily about what competition was doing?
It had nothing to do with any. They just, no, none of these executives that I knew, based on direct information for people who were a part of the process at the time. Those people who were undermining WCW starting back in July of 98 or August of 98 would never say anything to my face. We would never have a conversation in an environment where other people could hear. They would do their business far away from me in my eyes. They were doing things that I was not involved in, not aware of until it affected me. I was not a part of the discussion to cut my budget right after being mandated to create a new show for TBS in prime time. I wasn't a part of that conversation. Nobody asked me what my thoughts were. Hey, Eric, I know you're taking on this new network primetime show, and you're not getting a license fee or anything for it. We're going to help you out with production, but the rest of it's all on you. But we're also kind of thinking about maybe reducing your budget, because we have these other divisions over here and we're positioning for this merger and we're trying to get our stock prices up. And the only way we get our stock prices up, by the way, because I know you don't know anything about this shit, is to increase our EBITDA amongst all of the divisions so that we can project earnings in a much more favorable way and raise our stock prices. So at the time of the merger, when it becomes official, all of us executives who have like a shit fucking ton of stock options, like we're buying fucking islands and yachts and all kinds of shit. But that's not going to happen unless we can kind of across the board show a much better, interesting financial picture at the time of the proposed merger. That's what my life was. I would find out all this shit after it had all been decided, and then I had to operate accordingly. Yeah, it was a fun time. But no, none of those people would ever say anything to my face, Travis. None of them would have the conversation in public. They would just take care of their shit backstage, so to speak.
Bobby says, Eric and Conrad, do either of you have the intel on the whereabouts of the NWO monster truck? I would love to have it in my driveway when the wife gets home. You guys did do some fun stuff. Any idea where any of those monster trucks wound up, Eric?
Probably with the people that built them. Mike Weber would know for sure, because Mike was kind of the linchpin to those different relationships, Bigfoot and Gravedigger and all that. I don't know, but I would imagine they probably existed on the circuit until they were tired of them, and they may have been melted down and, I don't know, turned into something else. I don't know. Cool to have one, though. If you see me driving around in like the Hulk Hogan monster truck in Cody, like I'd be in every parade. I'd fulfill my wish. I've always wanted to ride my horse in a parade in Cody because it's like a big, big damn deal. The 4th of July parade in Cody, Wyoming is a slice of Americana that you will not find. Well, you'll find it in the Rocky Mountain area in small towns like Cody. But outside of the Rocky Mountain area, the kind of true cowboy culture, the real shit, not the fake Hollywood bullshit, 4th of July parades are the bomb. And I always wanted to ride my horse in a parade, just like wave at the kids, throw them some candy, all that kind of, parade shit. And I had my horse. I got my horse trained. I rode my horse in parades in Arizona. I carried the flag. I was one of those guys in the horse parade carrying the flag like a rodeo queen. And I was going to do it here in Cody. Travel got in the way. My life got in the way. And then I finally, I wasn't able to ride my horse enough to do him justice. And he was a really good horse. His name was Lucky. He was a Palomino, Missouri Foxtrotter. Great horse. Rode him a lot, put a lot of miles on the horse. But I finally let him go because I wasn't able to spend enough time with him for the horse to live up to his potential. So I let him go, and I've never been in the parade. But if I had a Hulk Hogan monster truck, they would invite me. I'd be the grand marshal every year. Kids would go wild. People would be awed. It would be perfect.
We just saw the finish of the Macho Man Randy Savage segment, of course, with Kevin Nash and the Lewis Septic Service plug at the end of the segment. I have to admit, that was pretty fun. It did feel a little bit like a Saturday Night Live skit. We had a camera in the back of the limousine so we could actually see a live action shot of the Dookie coming into the cabin there. And then, of course, once the truck pulls away, they all take turns spilling out of the door of the limousine. And then we see Kevin Nash, driving the truck as he shuts the door. We see the name of the company. And then they even, show the reaction shot of those folks covered in Duke. And then the big full screen plug, like it was a Valvoline, in-program sponsorship. It was funny. I enjoyed it, but it did feel like WWF light. I mean, we've all sort of heard that Vince McMahon was really obsessed with toilet humor, and that sort of stunt felt like it was a page out of the Vince Russo playbook, but Russo's not here. Who do you think was such a big advocate for what if we put a shit hose in the Macho Man's limousine?
Kevin.
Okay.
And I think, look, here's a fact. A year before all this, maybe a year and a half, Kevin Nash pushed me. I say pushed me. Convinced me to have a phone call with Vince Russo back when Vince Russo was in creative in WWE, because Russo and Nash stayed in contact. To what degree, I don't know. But they remained friends. They were friends. And Nash came to me one day. It was at a Nitro early in the day, and he said, "Hey, I really think," he might have brought somebody with him to kind of back him up and support him in convincing me that I should at least talk to Russo. They came to me and said, "Look, we really think he'd be a great addition. We think he'd work well with him. This is, somebody we think would be kind of cool to add to the team." And I did talk to Russo. It was the most awkward, probably inappropriate waste of time to have a conversation like I should have had with Russo on the idea of exploring working together. That should have been something that I did in my office or at home in a relaxed environment, not surrounded by, number one, the pressure of having to produce a live television show that day that I'm also performing in, but also being surrounded by people that were aware of who I was talking to, because it's going to change the dynamic of the conversation. No matter how much I don't want to, it's going to. But I did have that conversation with Russo, and I wasn't impressed, and probably because of the situation, in fairness to Vince Russo, wasn't impressed and never followed up on it. So and I say all of that to contextualize kind of frame of mind here, why perhaps Kevin was seeing some of the Russo style television on WWE. They're kicking our ass. Kevin's a smart guy. He sees what's working. Let's try it here. That's how that happened. It's kind of like catching a cold.
Coach Keith Morrison is here with us live, and he wants to know, when you left play-by-play to do the NWO full-time as a character, did you miss doing play-by-play? Did you miss being a part of the broadcast team here for Nitro, Eric?
Absolutely. Actually, play-by-play was the most fun. As far as my on-camera stuff, I mean, there's different times when I had a blast. WWE, there was some amazing stuff I got to do on camera. That was a blast. Same in WCW. But overall, from sheer enjoyment of the process, I love doing play-by-play. I was never really that good at it. I was adequate. I can do it. And in some ways, I had certain ways of approaching it that was perhaps beneficial than others, but I was just pretty average. But I loved doing it. Just because I wasn't the best at it didn't mean I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it. Because you're creating a story. You're creating characters. I get to use my imagination to create. I always thought, and Vern Gagne taught me this. Absolutely, Vern Gagne taught me this, is to imagine that you've got wrestling fans that are watching or listening because they're blind. Describe to them and make them excited audibly the same way you are visually. Now, I'm paraphrasing that because I'm saying it differently than Bert said it to me, but you get the point. And that's what a lot of the play-by-play announcers that I grew up listening to in AWA, that's what they did. So I kind of understood what Vern was trying to teach me. And that's how I approached it, which is why I enjoyed it so much, because it allowed me to tap into my imagination. I wasn't just calling the action. I was using the guidance, the experience that was given to me by Vern when I was learning the first time I ever did it. Okay, here's the basics. And then throughout that entire process, I learned to use my imagination to create a narrative audibly that may not even exist visually. And that's not to mean that I'm going to tell a different story than the people are seeing, but use your imagination to make it more exciting, to make it more impactful, to make it mean something other than just saying it's happening and calling the action. That's the art of play-by-play that I think has been lost. The focus, it's not that the art has been lost, it's just that the focus has changed. And I think the style of play-by-play and color, which are almost indistinguishable in many cases, not all, that is the element of play-by-play and color that I think could be fixed so freaking easily, because the talent that are currently not doing what they should be doing have done it for decades. You're not teaching them a new trick. You're just shifting the focus and the intent of that narrative to enhance what people are seeing and experiencing, as opposed to just telling them what they're seeing and experiencing. All right, sorry. I know I'm going off track on a lot of this shit today. I apologize, but that's what keeps it fun for me. So.
Well, what keeps it fun for all of us at home is BlueChew.com. It's a unique online service that delivers us the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in a chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. And it's so easy to get signed up. Really, take a look at how easy this process is. You sign up at BlueChew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, well, you get your prescription within a few days. And here's the best part, man. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door, and it all happens in a discreet package. If you haven't tried it already, what are you waiting for? Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Let's chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code 83weeks at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is 83weeks to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. We're watching the main event here. It's Sting and Rick Steiner in a solid steel cage match. Our referee is Tank Abbott. And this is going to be the debut of Tank. Meltzer would have this to say. The Rick versus Steiner, or Rick Steiner versus Sting match in the cage with Tank as the ref was anything but funny. They clearly hadn't trained Tank even 1 second before throwing him out there to be lost. By the way, as a trivia note, the big bald guy that Tank runs around with is the same guy who ate Frank Shamrock's shoes after he poured nachos on him and challenged him to a fight the night before a UFC show back in late 96. Anyway, this was boring. Tank didn't even know how to count pins. Those idiot announcers were building Tank up as having the fastest hands in the world, as if. He's got a devastating power punch, but his hand speed is nothing special. Anyway, he clocked Sting and left the cage. Rick Steiner beat on Sting, but Sting made his own comeback. Maybe not the best debut for Tank, but this is heads up with Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker for the WWF title. We've got a television title match in a cage with Tank Abbott as the special guest referee. Man, it's no wonder you lost that night. I mean, that's an interesting match. Stone Cold and Undertaker. Wow.
I bet that put butts in seats. No, I bet it did. Right?
Yeah. Meltzer would actually give you a compliment here, though. He says about the only thing good on the show was Bischoff as an announcer over the final 2 hours. He was doing a combination of shoots and worked shoots, but at least he kept you on your toes and interested, rather than the terribly predictable WCW announcing crew, which never says anything. It isn't so much that the WCW announcers are bad, but that they're either not allowed to or they're afraid of, depending on the issue, to say anything controversial. So what do you think of that? Do you think at times your announcers did play it too safe, and that's what you, as this established television character, could bring to the table a little bit of that controversy?
I don't think it's that serious as that. I think it's just, it's exactly what I said in my most recent diatribe. I just had a different perspective. I had a different way of telling the story. I had a different approach to my job in play-by-play. It's not that it was that much better than the other WCW announcers, but this is another exact example, perfect example. It was different then, therefore it felt fresh, and the audience, like including Dave, who's always hated my guts, could at least recognize it. So I wasn't any better. I didn't have any more latitude. I didn't have more courage. I just was different. I looked at play-by-play differently. And I think part of it, and this is not a knock on anybody, but no matter what you do, when you do as much of it as, for example, Tony Schiavone did and still does, or Michael Cole, or anybody else, if you're not acutely aware, like every time you turn a mic on, that it's really easy to fall into a rut and do the same thing the same way, with the same tone, with the same rhythm, with the same levels of emotion every single time you do it 300 fucking times a year, the audience will tune you out. Even this show today, I'm taking a different approach to the show today than you and I normally take. I'm trying to get into a little bit of a deeper thought process of what I may have been thinking then, or what I'm analyzing now. I'm doing it intentionally because I want to try something different. I want this podcast to be as successful as it can be, just like I would want, if I'm doing play-by-play, my work to make my product as successful as it can be. So I'm going to try different things until I see the kind of growth pattern that I'm comfortable with. And more importantly, till I know for sure I'm not doing the same fucking thing every single time I do it, because even I will get bored with my shit if I do it the same way every single time. And if I'm bored, I can bet that the audience is.
I can't believe we just watched that Randy Savage, Kevin Nash segment, and not once did I ask you who booked this shit.
Kevin. Hey, he'll admit it.
We finally got to the bottom of the answer. When you see the ratings come out and you guys get a 3.3 and they get a 6.3, I mean, do you shit your pants full of doo-doo?
Truthfully, no. I didn't give a shit. Ratings no longer mattered. They didn't. There was nothing. Until I could change the things that I felt I needed to change and had the ability and the authority and the latitude to change them, it didn't fucking matter what the ratings were. There's nothing I can do about it. The only thing that I could affect or impact were the challenges that were in front of me, and ratings was behind me. I mean, once a rating comes out, it's out. There's nothing I can do about it. What can I do to fix it next week? That's what I was focused on. And those issues had really nothing to do, believe it or not, well, they did. They had everything to do with creative, but what was inhibiting us from moving forward went beyond creative.
Well, we're going to go beyond creative next week. We're seeing Nitro wind down here after that cage match. It was the big Tank Abbott debut. But next week is the Hummer Angle. And I know that you've wanted to ask Eric about this for years. Well, this is your chance. We're going to be watching it, doing a watch along next week. You can join us live over at adfreeshows.com or enjoy it at 83weeks.com. That's where we want to hear from you. 83weeks.com is your home for all things Eric Bischoff. So make sure you've hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're going to click and turn on the notifications bell. Throw us a thumbs up, throw us a thumbs down, leave us a comment. And if you've got a question for us, that's an excellent place to ask it as well. Interact with us on social media. It's at 83weeks on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can catch lots of fun swag and merch available as well. That's at 83weeksmerch.com. And if your business is targeting men 25 to 54, we got them. It's easy to advertise here with us as well at advertisewitheric.com. This is the time of year. Schools are getting out. People are looking to maybe look for a new house. I can help you with that in my real life at savewithconrad.com. give me a call toll free. I'll get you out of that apartment and into a house with no money out of pocket at 888-425-0105 or savewithconrad.com, or just shoot me an email, conrad@savewithconrad.com. If I can't help you save some cash, I won't waste your time. We're routinely helping our podcast listeners save $500, $600, $700, even $800 a month. Last month, we helped a listener save $1,500 a month. Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. NMLS number 32416. Eric, we covered a lot of ground today. We, in the last week, have done a profile piece on Mr. Regal. We talked about Queen and King of the Ring. We talked about AEW's big pay-per-view, Double or Nothing. Now we've covered Tank Abbott's debut and pretty controversial angle with Kevin Nash. And next week we talk about the Hummer angle, and it's all happening at 83weeks.com. I'm having a lot of fun lately, man. It feels like we're covering a lot of topics and providing a lot of value at 83weeks.com.
I am having an absolute blast. I would have never believed, at this stage of my life, I would be as excited about doing some of the things that you and I and all of us are doing over at 83weeks.com. It's an opportunity to try some new shit and have fun. And I love that.
And we're going to have some fun next week. Hit the subscribe button, tell your friends, and tune in next week right here to 83weeks.com.
Hey, this is the national treasure, Nick Aldis, and I am recommending that you go to savewithconrad.com for all your home buying needs. If you listen to any of Conrad's shows, which I do on a regular basis, it's pretty hard to miss the fact that he's in the mortgage business. When the time came that we were looking to buy a place, it was really my first choice. I just got the feeling right from the start that Jimmy and Conrad and the whole team really wanted us to succeed. It felt like it should. It felt like we were all on the same team. It felt like we were in business together, which is, to me, is really how a home purchase and a mortgage process should feel. Not only would I recommend Save with Conrad to friends and coworkers, I have many times already. If I know that they're in they're house hunting, my first recommendation to them always is get in touch with Conrad. Like, his team are the real deal, and they will be straight up with you and do everything they can to get you in that house.
NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com.